Larry Walker is one of the best Canadians to ever play baseball, but originally, that wasn't the plan. Over time, he realized that life had other plans in store for him and rose to the top of his generation within Major League Baseball. There aren't many players who can compare to Walker in terms of overall game. He had a rocket for an arm and could hit the cover off the ball. He also has quite possibly the funniest blooper in All-Star Game history. From his five-tool talent to his iconic SpongeBob shirt, there's a lot to discuss surrounding the life and career of Larry Walker. I hinted at this during my Craig Biggio video because I'm very excited to talk about Larry Walker today. Thank you to everyone for the suggestions, and make sure to leave a comment and maybe it'll be featured on a future video. As always, if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. Hit the bell to enable all notifications so you don't miss any future Cam23 videos. Larry Kenneth Robert Walker Jr. was born on December 1st in 1966. He was born in Maple Ridge, Canada, located in British Columbia. Something I should probably point out was that the Walkers all had names that rhymed. Mary and Larry Sr. are the parents, and they had 4 boys: Barry, Carrie, Gary, and Larry Jr., of course. Go figure that they would unconsciously name 2 of their boys after characters from SpongeBob. We'll delve into this later on. Growing up, Larry Jr. was a huge hockey fan. The Montreal Canadiens were his favorite team, and he would pursue his dream of one day being their goalie. Since the high school he attended didn't have a baseball team, he would instead play baseball in a Canadian amateur league located in Vancouver. During his hockey career, he would cross paths with Cam Neely, a future Hall of Fame power forward who spent the majority of his career with the Boston Bruins. They were teammates together during their time in junior hockey. In addition, Kerry Walker would eventually be drafted by the Canadiens, but would never get the chance to play in the NHL. At 16 years old, Larry was offered a tryout with 2 Junior A teams, one of which was in his home province, the British Columbia. Getting on either team would allow him to get noticed by NHL scouts. Larry's playing days would come to a halt after he was cut from the team after falling into a third-string role as the team's goalie. It wasn't an easy decision to switch gears and become a baseball player late in his teenage years, but his knack for learning new information quickly proved handy when learning the fundamentals of baseball. At 17 years old, Larry shifted his focus to baseball. He worked his way to Canada's national team and played in the 1984 World Youth Championships. After graduating high school, Larry didn't know what his future held. There were no fruitful offers to take advantage of. Standing at a crossroads with education on one side and pursuing an arduous journey to Major League Baseball on the other, Larry decided to take the latter. The calculated risk he took would soon be rewarded. Bob Rogers, a scout for the Montreal Expos, reached out to express interest in signing Larry to a minor league contract. On November 14, 1984, Larry Walker signed with the Montreal Expos and received a $1,500 signing bonus. To sum up his first taste of professional baseball, I'm going to quote the man himself. "I'd never seen a forkball, never seen a slider. I didn't know they existed. Baseball just wasn't big. The weather was against it. Nobody ever played baseball thinking about making the major leagues. It was just a game, just something to do." If you grew up playing or watching baseball, the rules become second nature. But for Larry, he was still learning. There was one instance where he learned the hard way that when you're a base runner, if the ball is popped up, you have to touch every base on the way back. He found himself running in a straight line from third to first. He beat the throw, but to his dismay was called out for failing to re-tag second base. In his own words, "Why? I was already there." His coaching staff along the way maintained their faith in Walker. They trusted that soon enough, he would excel. The following year, Larry Walker found the necessary confidence that would lead him to an incredible season. In 1986, Larry Walker hit a combined 33 homers and drove in 90 RBIs across 2 levels of minor league ball. Following his late season promotion, he would suffer a setback, breaking his arm. But nonetheless, the excitement was building in Canada for the arrival of Larry Walker on the Major League team. The next year saw Larry Walker put together a 20-homer, 20-steal season in Double-A. He showcased his base stealing abilities and raw power during the season. A common theme that you'll hear throughout this video today is overcoming adversity, especially in regards to injuries. An off-season injury playing winter ball caused him to miss the entire 1988 season. The initial prognosis made it seem like his career could be in jeopardy. Luckily, Walker wasn't fazed by this and continued to look for the positives. He envisioned himself playing well the moment he came back, and that he did. But not before a groin injury slowed down his progress in spring training, when he returned in 1999. Once back in the lineup, he picked up right where he left off and stole 36 bases in 114 games en route to getting the call to the Major League squad. Throughout his big league career, Larry Walker strictly wore the number 33. He was extremely superstitious regarding the number 3. He took practice swings instead of 3, set his alarm for 33 minutes past the hour each day, and would eventually marry his first wife Krista on November 3rd at 3:33 p.m. Now, it was only 20 games, but his first cup of coffee with the Expos didn't go according to plan. In an absurd 22-inning game, the longest in team history, Walker left third base early on a sacrifice fly and was called out. Later on, he would redeem himself with an excellent play to rob Eddie Murray of extra bases. The Expos would eventually go on to lose this game against the Dodgers, 1-0. This game was the start of a 1-for-22 slump for Walker, and it tanked his batting average as he finished the year batting 170. The Expos had hoped that promoting Walker would provide the necessary jolt to make a postseason run, but the team lost 27 out of their last 43 games, dropping them to 4th in the standings. The incumbent right fielder for the Expos, Hubie Brooks, left in free agency at the end of 1989, opening up a spot for Larry Walker to step in as the everyday right fielder. 95% of his career was spent playing right field. Larry Walker's rookie season in 1990 saw him nearly get to the 2020 club as he fell just 1 homer shy. He finished 7th in Rookie of the Year voting. Coming off a strong rookie showing, Larry struggled mightily to begin 1991, and the team considered platooning him. But in time, he started to heat up. But that success was put on hold as he sustained a hamstring injury and wound up on the injured list at the end of June. He came back 2 weeks later and from there on out, hit extremely well. He finished the season batting .290 in 137 games for a last-place Expos team that finished 19 games below .500. This was still just a preview as to the kind of player he would eventually become. 1992 was an eventful year for Walker. He collected 16 outfield assists that won him his first Gold Glove award. Not to mention he threw out Tony Fernandez at first base from right field. He made his first All-Star game, won his first Silver Slugger award, and finished 5th in MVP voting. On a team level, the Expos kept improving, finishing in 2nd place this year. 1993 saw Walker maintain his power numbers, but his batting average plummeted. He hit .265, but in terms of his defense was still up there with the best of them, winning his 2nd Gold Glove award. The Expos finished with a 94-68 record thanks to Felipe Alou in his first full season as manager. 1994 was an eventual strike-shortened season that started off well for Walker. That is, offensively. Defensively, he made the all-time blooper reel, as he forgot how many outs there were after catching a fly ball in right field. Instead of throwing the ball in with 2 outs, he handed it to a young boy in the stands. When he realized how many outs there were, he retrieved the ball and kept the runner, Jose Offerman, from advancing beyond third base. Walker promised the young kid that he would get him a ball when it wasn't in the middle of the inning. The next pitch thrown was a 2-run homer, so luckily for Larry, the runner scored regardless. No harm, no foul. The funniest part was the broadcast flashing his name above the statement that he won 2 straight Gold Gloves. That's some comedic gold right there. The next inning, Walker found the young kid and gave him a ball as he took the field. As the season progressed, the Expos started to show the baseball world that they were serious playoff contenders. When August rolled around, many thought the Expos were World Series bound. Their roster featured many star players, including Pedro Martinez, Moises Alou, and Marquis Grissom, just to name a few. Larry Walker suffered a torn rotator cuff, which surprisingly only caused him to miss 4 games. The team moved Walker from right field to first base in order to accommodate his weakened throwing arm. Offensively, he didn't miss a beat. He batted .364 in 35 games at first base, raising his average to .322. Unfortunately for Walker and the Expos, their hopes of winning a World Series were cut short, as the players went on strike, ending the 1994 season prematurely. Many what-ifs have stemmed from this season, including Tony Gwynn's chase for a .400 batting average and a potential World Series championship for the Montreal Expos. This began the downfall for the franchise. The next 10 years consisted of cutting payroll, lacking fan attendance, and the team eventually relocating to Washington, D.C. in 2004. But back to Larry Walker. While it was a sour end to the season, he was in the midst of his best season yet. As I mentioned, he hit .322, led the league in doubles, hit 19 homers, drove in 86, stole 15 bags, and posted a 151 OPS+. He finished 11th in MVP voting, and keep in mind, he did this all in just 103 games. Larry Walker hit the free agent market earlier than expected, as many players who were in their final year of arbitration were made free agents thanks to the weirdness that ensued following the '94 season. That's the shortened version of the story, but in the end, Larry Walker's time with the Montreal Expos was over, as he went on to sign with the Colorado Rockies. The next chapter would define what became a Hall of Fame career. Denver, Colorado is where Larry Walker took his abilities to the next level. And before you point to Coors Field, I'm going to need you to keep one thing in mind. OPS Plus is a stat I'm going to use a lot in this video, because it's the most reliable indicator of how one player sizes up to the rest of the league. Essentially, it's a league-adjusted on-base plus slugging percentage. A 100 OPS Plus is league average, and the percentage amount that a player is above or below this tells you where they stand. For example, a 120 OPS Plus is 20% better than league average. The most helpful thing is that OPS Plus adjusts for external factors, like ballparks in a high-altitude park like Coors Field. This is an important stat to keep in your back pocket. In Walker's first season in Colorado, he integrated himself into a group that is known as the Blake Street Bombers. The other three players given this title are Andres Galarraga, Dante Bichette, and Vinny Castilla, all of whom hit 30 or more homers during the '95 season. But let's talk about Larry Walker's regular season. In 131 games, Walker reached the 30 homer and 100 RBI thresholds for the first time in his big league career. He batted .306, stole 16 bases, and posted a 131 OPS plus. While that is a great number, he still hadn't reached his ceiling yet. In MVP voting, he finished 7th. Despite finishing just 10 games above 500, the Rockies made it to the playoffs, matching up against the Atlanta Braves, who had a much better pitching staff. The Blake Street Bombers were no match for the Braves' big three: Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, and Tom Glavine. Although Walker wasn't bad at all in the series, he got on base at a 39% clip and hit a dinger while driving in 3. After a strong introduction to the Rockies, 1996 would become a season hampered by injuries. In June, Walker broke his collarbone during a game when he ran into the outfield wall. Prior to the injury, he was playing well, as he hit 14 homers and stole 12 bases in just 53 games. His return 60 games later was short-lived, as he would strain his shoulder in a collision involving Cincinnati Reds shortstop Barry Larkin, a future Hall of Famer. The injury had a major impact on a less than stellar finish to the regular season. The 1996 injury train continued into the offseason. During a fishing trip in Vancouver, Walker separated his right shoulder. Luckily, this didn't cause him to miss any time in 1997. Ahead of the 1997 season, Larry Walker said this in spring training: "I've got a lot to prove this year, not only to myself, because I'll never make myself happy, no matter how good I do. I've got a lot to prove to the city of Denver and the fans. I want to win, and I want to do well. I know it's there, it's just a matter of doing it." To say he lived up to his end of the bargain would be an understatement. Luis Arraez of the Miami Marlins almost took a .400 average into July this year, and his average was in the news almost every day. Well, Larry Walker on July 17th in 1997 was batting .402. To take a .400 average that late into the season is beyond impressive. Larry Walker, however, faced a tall task in the batting title race. Tony Gwynn was a tough competitor, and in the end, would beat out Walker for the batting title. Let's take a look at Larry Walker's season as a whole, because do we ever have a lot to discuss? I want to first acknowledge that Walker would make the all-time blooper reel during the 1997 All-Star Game, when he put his batting helmet on backwards and batted righty instead of lefty against Randy Johnson. The two were former teammates back when they both were on the Montreal Expos. Facing the big unit as a left-handed hitter was quite possibly the most intimidating thing on planet Earth. So to combat this, Walker decided he might as well goof around and try hitting from the other side. He saw one pitch as a righty before batting lefty again. For an exhibition game, it's fun when you see the players bending the rules, just a little. Another thing that's definitely worth mentioning is the supposed alliance that Larry Walker and Andres Galarraga had with each other. Let me explain. When I was digging through highlights to make this video, I noticed a bazillion occurrences of Walker and Galarraga hitting back-to-back homers. There had to have been some sort of contract that in layman's terms said when Walker hit a dinger, it was then mandatory for Galarraga to hit one too. Walker registered a 3-homer game this season along with a string of 4 consecutive games with a homer, including the 200th of his career. As impressive as Larry Walker was offensively in 1997, you can't ignore that he was as sound a defender as anybody. He had 12 outfield assists in right field and had a .992 fielding percentage. The The 9.7 WAR he put together was the highest in all of Major League Baseball that season. And well, would you look at that, finishing just below him was none other than Craig Biggio. Larry Walker joined the 30-30 Club in 1997, an exclusive list of players to hit 30 homers and steal 30 bases in a single season. Well, Larry didn't just hit 30 homers, he hit 49, which led the league. He stole 33 bases, drove in 130 runs, hit 366 for the season, and led the league in on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, and total bases. The dude was near or at the top of every offensive category imaginable. This became the first and only season that Walker reached 200 hits in a single season. Mike Piazza was the only National League player with a higher OPS plus than Walker. In terms of accolades for Walker's 1997 season, the real question we should ask ourselves is what didn't he win? First, let's mention that he was an All-Star for the second time in his career. He won the Gold Glove and Silver Slugger together for the second time in his big league career, and last but certainly not least, took home the MVP award. And rightfully so. In the process, he became the first Canadian-born baseball player to win the MVP. Eventually, Joey Votto and Justin Morneau would add their names to the Canadian-born MVP list. Both players have shown their appreciation for Larry Walker, inspiring a whole generation of Canadians to play baseball. But the most impressive thing to me about his season aren't the accolades at all. It's the fact that away from Coors Field, Larry Walker hit .346 and mashed 29 of his 49 homers on the road. After receiving some grief the year prior for lacking an ability to hit away from Coors, Walker proved during his 1997 season that high altitude wasn't the reason for his near 50-homer season. Coming off the best season of his career, Walker suffered an offseason injury that persisted and hindered his 1998 season. Larry Walker was hard on himself. When he found out that he made the All-Star team, he didn't feel worthy to be selected. Throughout the remainder of the season, he battled injuries, but when he was on the field, he was a force to be reckoned with. By season's end, he had won his first career batting title, hitting .363 and posted an OPS over 1,000 for the second consecutive season. He walked more than he struck out, and his OPS plus was on par with what he accomplished in his last season in Montreal. He won his fourth Gold Glove award and in MVP voting, finished 17th. Thanks to injuries, the missed time definitely hurt his MVP chances. He underwent surgery on his elbow in the offseason and would start 1999 on the injured list thanks to a strained rib cage, although it only caused him to miss the first week of the regular season. He got off to a slow start, but thanks to some advice from hitting coach Clint Hurdle, he found his stride in late April. This propelled him to his second consecutive batting title as he hit .379 and made his third All-Star team in a row. He hit 37 homers, drove in 115, led the league in on-base, slugging, and OPS, like he did during his MVP season just 2 seasons earlier. Walker was a multifaceted player throughout his career, and the Gold Glove defense he showcased would merit winning his third consecutive Gold Glove award. He finished in the top 10 in MVP voting and won his fourth career Silver Slugger. 1997 to 1999 capped what I believe to be the peak of Walker's talent. The Colorado Rockies as a team, however, had a linear fall, going from third place in 97 to last place in 99. That's not to say that Larry Walker wouldn't continue to be a fantastic all-around player. The year 2000 rolled around and the injury bug came back. This time, it was more persistent. He got into just 87 games but still hit over 300 and walked more than he struck out. Walker in the offseason leading up to 2001 worked out with a personal trainer and returned to form. He won his third and final batting title and hit 38 homers, the second highest total of his career. He would reach 300 career homers during this season and in MVP voting finished 24th. Considering he posted a 7.8 WAR, this seems a bit low to me. Walker followed up his bounce-back year with an outstanding season in 2002. He was 51% better than league average in terms of OPS+, and would reach the 100 RBI club for the 5th time in his career. The Rockies as a whole continued to disappoint, residing in 4th and 5th place from the years 2000 to 2004. Walker faced multiple injuries to begin 2004, and midway through this season, he was faced with a dilemma. But before we discuss that, let's acknowledge that on June 30th, he recorded his 2000th hit. However, it was around this time that the Rockies no longer saw him in their long-term plans. And while he'd been great in both 2003 and 2004, the Rockies showed no signs of improvement and looked to get something back for their aging star player. They decided to trade Walker, and while he had the power to veto any trade, he figured that after 15 seasons without a World Series ring, it was time to take his chances with a new team. The next franchise Larry Walker played for would be the St. Louis Cardinals, and made an instant impact on the club. He posted a 144 OPS plus and mashed 11 homers in just 44 games during the stretch run. The Cardinals matched up with the Dodgers in the first round of the playoffs, and they took down LA, thanks in large part to Larry Walker. He hit 2 homers in the division series and hit 2 more in the championship series against the Houston Astros, who they went on to beat. Larry Walker would finally get a chance to play in the World Series. He would not disappoint either, hitting another 2 homers and hitting a ridiculous .357. But unfortunately, the Cardinals would be swept by a Red Sox team that broke the curse of the Bambino. Walker returned in 2005 to help the Cardinals get back to the playoffs. Along the way, he battled a neck injury, and his October performance was nowhere near what it was in 2004. The Cardinals beat the Padres in the division series, but fell to the Astros this time around. After his age 38 season, Walker called it a career after 17 years. As a big leaguer, Walker posted a 72.7 WAR, .313 batting average, a .400 on-base percentage, .965 OPS, 141 OPS plus, 383 home runs, 1,311 RBIs, and 230 stolen bases. If you were to talk to Larry himself, he would admit that these numbers should all be higher, but injuries held him back countless times throughout his career. Instead of dwelling on the lost time, we should also remember that he was a 5-time All-Star, won 7 Gold Gloves, 3 Silver Sluggers, 3 batting titles, and of course, an MVP award. Following his retirement, Walker was inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame in 2007 and the British Columbia Sports Hall of Fame in 2009. Walker would go on to coach in the World Baseball Classic for Team Canada in the 2006 and 2009 World Baseball Classics. Once eligible, Walker had difficulties getting elected to the Hall of Fame. I guess you could say it was a rocky road. For one thing, injuries took away nearly 3 seasons worth of games. Counting stats like 3,000 hits and 500 home runs aren't a requirement, but they definitely help. The lack of a World Series ring also stood in Walker's way of Cooperstown. But the biggest reason for not getting elected sooner has to do with Coors Field. The voters avoid Colorado hitters like the plague. Just ask Todd Helton. To get into the Hall of Fame, you need 75% of the votes to be elected. In his second to last year on the ballot, Walker got just 54% of the vote. At this point, Walker himself admitted that he'd given up on the Hall of Fame. I don't blame him, but miraculously, he would get elected in 2020, his final year on the ballot. He got 76.6% of the vote, just barely squeaking into the Hall of Fame. I could sit here for another 10 minutes and just ramble on about how that's a travesty, but the bottom line is, Larry Walker is a Hall of Famer. A funny side note is that when Larry Walker got the call to the Hall of Fame, he was wearing a SpongeBob shirt that said, "Ain't no ordinary sponge." Okay, but seriously, what are the odds that he has a brother named Gary? Alright, back to the point. In all seriousness, Walker's shirt is the perfect synopsis of his career. He was no ordinary ball player, and he's certainly someone that we should always remember. His positive attitude, humble nature, and comedic relief at times made Larry Walker a captivating player to watch day in and day out. To quote SpongeBob one last time, why don't we all strive to live like Larry? Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on the video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.